This is the grand conspiracy, right? The grand conspiracy is the pharmaceutical companies are all in cahoots to try to make anybody who takes this stuff look crazy. But what's crazy is look how better I got.
Yeah.
I got better pretty quick, bitch.
Joe Rogan unfortunately decided to double down on his use of ivermectin to treat coronavirus, even though there is no evidence that suggests that ivermectin, a treatment for parasitic infections, is in fact an effective treatment for COVID-19. Now, this is really disastrous because, to be quite honest with you, I think I might have overestimated Joe Rogan's intelligence, and that's really embarrassing on my part. Now, if you're asking why, you'll understand in this video where he says that ivermectin did in fact help him, but he's wrong about that, and I'll prove it in just a second. Let's watch.
But what they didn't highlight is that I got better.
Yeah, you got better quickly.
They try to make it seem as if like I'm doing some wacky that's completely ineffective. And CNN was saying that I'm a distributor of misinformation.
So he also said in the context of that conversation that he should maybe sue CNN. But if he's going to sue them specifically for alleging that he is spreading misinformation, he wouldn't have a case because he is, I think, unintentionally spreading misinformation. So I don't think that there's any, malice in what he's doing. I think he genuinely believes that ivermectin somehow helped him, somehow made him better after he tested positive for coronavirus. But here's the thing, if you decide to take ivermectin, and that is the only drug you are taking to treat your coronavirus, issue, then maybe you can make a case, right? But it's not like he did some sort of controlled experiment. In fact, he was very transparent about throwing the kitchen sink at this COVID diagnosis. Let's watch.
Got tested, and turns out I got COVID. So we immediately threw the kitchen sink at it. All kinds of meds, monoclonal antibodies, ivermectin, Z-Pak, prednisone, everything.
So monoclonal antibodies, prednisone, which is a steroid, Z-Pak, which is the, I believe, flu medication. He's taken a bunch of things in addition to ivermectin, and he is arguing that ivermectin is what helped him feel better. I thought he was smarter than that. Like, I thought he would be able to, realize that if you're taking monoclonal antibodies, which by the way isn't widely available to everyone, that's what Trump was treated with, okay? Some people have access to it, a lot of people don't have access to it. But I would venture to say that the monoclonal antibodies probably had some impact on helping him feel better. I'm not 100% sure, but it's certainly not ivermectin because there's no scientific data indicating that ivermectin, which treats parasitic infections, works for COVID-19. There's no data, there's no data, there's no data. In fact, the one meta-analysis that everyone keeps pointing to was withdrawn. How does he not know this? How does he not know this? In fact, I know I'm repetitive. I know I've talked about this a billion times, but look, I don't care about Joe Rogan. I care about the people who are watching his show or listening to his show who might not know better, okay? I'm worried about them. Joe Rogan's got all the resources in the world to not be an idiot, but he has chosen to be an idiot. So whatever, he could do whatever he wants. But the fact that he's pushing a drug that is not effective for COVID-19 is dangerous to his listeners. So let's go back to that meta-analysis that was withdrawn. Why was it withdrawn? Well, why don't we go to Dr. Andrew Hill, who was one of the co-authors for that meta-analysis? What did he say? Our meta-analysis of survival for ivermectin had to be retracted after one of the main studies was suspected of medical fraud. With the revised version, there is no statistically significant survival benefit for ivermectin. So the original version should not be quoted, but it keeps getting quoted by some people who apparently could be bad actors. maybe decided not to really read up or follow up on what's going on with ivermectin. But nonetheless, there is no scientific evidence indicating that ivermectin, which is a treatment for parasitic infections, works as either a prophylactic or a treatment for COVID-19. But there is a grift involved when we're talking about the doctors pushing for the use of ivermectin, which again, has been reported repeatedly, and I've talked about repeatedly, but I'll get into that again. Before I do though, I just wanna show you what a genius Joe Rogan is as he's talking about this topic.
I had this guy on, Dr. Pierre Corey, and he is, what is the organization he's from? Frontline COVID Critical Care Workers? Yeah, there's a lot of C's. He's well-established doctors, treated thousands of people with COVID, and they've early on in the pandemic, they found some good efficacy with ivermectin. Frontline 19 Critical Care Alliance.
Okay.
Yeah. So I had him on, and he had talked to me about it. He's not the only doctor that told me to take it. Multiple doctors told me to take it. Mm-hmm. It's supposed to have what is the exact thing it's supposed to do? There's something that I highlighted. And this is obviously, I'm not a doctor. It says ivermectin was found to be a blocker of viral replicase, REPLICASE protease, and I don't know what this word is. Human TMPRSS2. I don't know.
Oh, that sounded super persuasive. Yeah. I mean, if I read that, I would totally take ivermectin for COVID. What? By the way, Z-Pak is an antibiotic. It's not for the flu. Just wanted to clarify that. I mixed up my drugs. But the point in mentioning that is that he was taking a bunch of different things, right? So to boil it down to ivermectin makes me feel better just doesn't make any sense. But he mentions in the last clip that I showed you that this doctor is the one who's been pushing it. He's with this organization, and why don't we look into the organization that he's talking about? Because the organization he's talking about is connected to a pill mill that runs out of a strip mall in America somewhere. I forget the exact state. And there's certainly a profit motive involved here, right? So on one hand, you have a free vaccine that Americans can get pretty much anywhere. There's like a CVS, Rite Aid, Walgreens. There have been some issues getting to rural parts of the country, but Biden certainly improved that, right? So why would people go out of their way to take a drug that they would have to pay for when there's a free vaccine? And as I talked about on the show earlier, there is a profit motive behind slanging this stuff. So let's talk about America's frontline workers for what, like the billionth time? So how do they make money, right? This organization. On its website, people looking for COVID-19 medicine are told to click on a button labeled contact a physician and pay $90 for a consultation. The link then takes customers to another website, Speak with an MD, where they're asked to submit payment information and told that one of the frontline doctors will call them within a few days, with sick patients being prioritized. The group describes Speak with an MD as a telemedicine service with hundreds of America's frontline doctors trained physicians. Interesting. Now, people could just go straight to that website, Speak with an MD, and they won't be charged $90 for a consultation. They'll be charged $30 less. The service is marketed on AFLD's site for $90, while a direct telemedicine consultation through Speak with an MD is listed at just $59.99, a $30 difference. So already, just by referring people to America's frontline doctors, that group of kooks, including the sperm demon doctor, by the way. Okay, the sperm demon doctor is part of this group. So, I mean, this is really persuasive stuff, definitely. Yeah, I'm gonna definitely take the parasitic infection drug for COVID-19. sperm demon doctor totally knows what's up. They're already making money off of just referring people to a telemedicine website. But it gets worse than that. They find other ways to make money. So the founder of America's Frontline Doctors is this woman named Simone Gold. She was arrested for participating in the January 6th riots in the Capitol. But they sent emails to supporters requesting their urgent and generous donations to withstand such aggressive assaults from the ruthless enemies of free speech. And they raised $400,000 for Gold's legal defense. America's Frontline Doctors built a slick website whose domain was bought by Tea Party patriots and an email list of loyal followers whom they urged to make donations. And Gold herself, by the way, sells tickets where people can meet her. She does these RV tours. In the spring of 2021, the group announced a national RV tour, which sold VIP tickets for a meet and greet with Gold for $1,000. No, but look, to be fair, Rogan makes a super persuasive case for taking the parasitic medication for COVID. But throw the kitchen sink at it, okay? You might not have access to monoclonal antibodies or that treatment, but whatever, doesn't matter. Don't get the vaccine apparently, and instead risk getting sick and hospitalized with COVID, which wouldn't be much of a problem for Joe Rogan. Because if the hospital bills him $38,000, he's gonna be fine. But let's keep it real, the average cost of a hospital stay for a COVID-19 patient is more than $38,000. So there's the cost component of it, but even worse, there's the death component of it. If someone is unfortunately misled into taking a drug for parasitic infections instead of getting the vaccine. But whatever, at this point, it's your choice. It's just super devastating that Joe Rogan is honestly delusional enough to think that ivermectin is what helped him feel better. Okay, have it your way.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR, so those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.